Hi there, you're welcome to LQA, where we help you understand intellectual property. We bring you up to speed with what's going on in the intellectual property marketplace. And most importantly, we help you commercialize your own intellectual property. LQA is brought to you by PTG Legal Services. We're a law firm based in Lagos, Nigeria, and we specialize in intellectual property and international trade law. Today we'll be giving you a brief understanding on what intellectual property is. The phrase intellectual property is composed of two words that are essential to helping you understand what that phrase means, how it works in practical affairs, and what it means in everyday life. So let's break it down. The first word is intellectual. What does intellectual mean? It means something from the mind. It means something that is intangible. It's something you can't touch, taste, or feel. It's something that has its essence and its main form as an idea. It came from the mind of a man, and its ideas you can manipulate. If you want to compare intellectual to physical, let's say you want to compare it to gold. Gold is physical. Gold is tangible. It's something you can touch, you can manipulate. You can manipulate intellectual things in a physical way. You can melt gold down, but you can't melt anything intellectual. When you melt gold, you can make it into jewelry, for necklaces, for wrist chains, rings, make it into teeth fillings. But things that are intellectual are intangible. They are essentially ideas. The second word is property. Now, as a regular dude, when you hear the word property, what essentially will come to your mind is you think of land, you think of houses, like real estate, brick and mortar houses, or you can think of things you own, like when you say your property. Your computer is your property, your phone, your shoes, things like that. That's property. And when you bring these two words together, intellectual and property, you have the phrase intellectual property. But in the word property, there's a second further meaning that is there in law, which exists, that gives the word its full meaning. Now, in the law, when you say you have property in something, it simply means that you have rights in that thing. You have rights to treat that thing in specific ways. You have rights to do certain things in that thing. For example, let's say the property we're referring to is a house. Now, a house, you can rent your house out to a bank, to a church. You can take in tenants, or you can sell your house. The law recognizes that you have rights in that house. So that is the meaning of property. So when we combine that further meaning to the word intellectual property, we simply mean the rights that you have to deal with things that are intellectual, that are mental, as though you have the same rights in them as you have in physical things. That's the meaning of intellectual property. Now, as a human being, there are many things which you can do normally. They are a normal and natural part of being a human being. You can think, you can go out, you can come in, you can buy stuff, you can sleep, you can go out, you can be free. The law records these things as your rights, and it calls them human rights. Now, the law doesn't give you these things. It just records them so that there can be a sense of order and of stability in society today. If you take that same idea of recording your rights in the realm of property, it's simple. What it's going to achieve, it's going to keep us from having all sorts of conflict. And the law is very much interested in having a society where there's order, where there's peace of mind. You can go out, you can come in, you can do the things you want to do, and there won't be any problem. Now, this is an example of why the law records your property rights. So if you have a house and you want to sell it, and someone comes and says, no, it's not your house, it's not my house. So we are going to have that argument for a long time. But to save us all that drama, the law just says, okay, fine, it's your right, no problem. Just go and record it so that we know who owns what, who doesn't own what, etc., etc. So that's the basic idea behind having intellectual property rights. Well, remember, we've said that intellectual refers to things that are intangible, things that you can't touch, taste, feel. So what exactly do we mean by this? Well, for example, we can look at the design of a dress. So, in Lagos, where we're based, there's a fashion designer called Itwen Basi. And a while ago, she designed a dress using newspaper print. What she did was, she made a pair of shorts, different patterns, and she got newspapers. Let's say you just get the Guardian, you get the Financial Times, and you put them together and you cut them out in the form of a dress. But the material is actually newspaper print. So she did that, and it was wildly successful. So she took it to the runway and it was really, really popular. Now, she has property rights in that dress, or rather, in that design of the dress, because the value is not the dress, it's the design. And she can say to the entire world that, look, this is my design, I came up with it. So you cannot reproduce it without my consent. The exact same way you can say to the entire world, you cannot drive my car without my consent. You cannot live in my house without my consent. You cannot go into my own apartment without my consent. She can also tell you that, look, you can't take my design and go and enter it into a fashion show and say it's yours, because it is my property. It's not my physical property. It's my what? My intellectual property. That's the idea. The law has given her rights in the design of that dress. The same way you have rights to your house. So she has those rights. That's an example of something that can be the subject of intellectual property rights. Something else would be like the design of a pair of ladies' shoes. Not so long ago, the fashion designer Christian Louboutin, he designed a pair of ladies' shoes where he put red leather at the bottom, and they are now called red bottoms. Now, he has intellectual property rights in that specific design of red bottoms. So, a designer in China can't just go take it and mass produce it. That's theft. He's stealing someone else's property, someone else's intellectual property, Christian Louboutin's in this instance. Another fashion designer can't take that design and say, okay, I'm going to establish it and do it. He's stealing, and you can't do that because it belongs to someone else. It is the subject of his intellectual property. The law has recorded his rights in that intellectual property the same way the law has recorded your rights in your physical house. Remember, our definition at the beginning was that property means you have specific rights in the subject matter, in things that you can treat. It means that you can treat it in specific ways. That's the meaning of intellectual property in a dress, in a pair of shoes. And another example would be music, which is very wildly popular. If you have a song that does well, massively popular, it's the words. Someone wrote those words. The music, the beats, as you call it, someone did that in the studio. So someone owns it the same way someone owns a house, and you can't take it and go and perform with someone else without that person's permission. You are stealing his intellectual property the same way you are stealing another person's house. You're taking another person's car. So that's essentially the meaning of intellectual property. And those are a few examples of scenarios where they work. In general, what does intellectual property mean? It means this thing belongs to me. It is my own. I can do what I want with it. It means this house belongs to you. You can do what you want with it. It is your house. No one can stop you. It's your house. You can rent it out if you want. You can sell it if you want. You can deconstruct it and move it somewhere else if you want. Why? Because it is your house, and the law records your property rights. But since what we are talking about is intellectual property, and it is intellectual property is intangible, the subject of intellectual property will be things that are intangible as well. Things that are basically ideas. Things like literary works. Things like ideas. Things like patterns. Things like artistic works. Things like inventions. All these things are not physical. They are all intangible. And the law recognizes that those things, you can treat them in specific ways because you have rights in them. The law sees that you have these rights. It records them and it gives them, and it says as, okay, you're the one who owns this. You are the one who can sell it. You are the one who can lease it. You are the one who can do such and such with it. That is what the essential meaning of intellectual property is. Now, as we move forward, there's an important idea about intellectual property rights that you have to understand. And it might be a bit confusing, but it's really not. And the idea is this. It's really a rule, an important fundamental rule that if you break, you simply cannot break it. And this is the rule. Intellectual property does not come into existence unless you have taken whatever that intellectual thing is and made it concrete or physical in some form. That is the unbreakable rule. Now you may think, what do you mean? I thought you said intellectual property is intellectual, it's an idea. Ideas are ideas, they are not concrete. So what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Here's what I mean. Because ideas are intangible, they are not physical, you cannot touch, taste, or feel them in any way. For us to be able to create a sense of order in life, the number one rule in the intellectual property environment that says you don't have any intellectual property until you make your intellectual idea or whatever it is concrete, is that once you've made it concrete, it comes into existence. If you don't make it concrete, you have no intellectual property whatsoever. An explanation of why that works is, we can both be arguing, I thought it up first, I saw it up first, blah, 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 blah. And we'll be there for a long time. And that defeats the purpose of recording your rights. So whatever your right is, you have to record it and make it concrete or tangible in some form so that you can say, okay, this is exactly what my right is. This is the full thing. This is what it is. This is what I had in mind. This is what I designed. So if you will notice, every intellectual thing is always reduced into an idea. For example, the code for Facebook, you are typing it on a computer and you can see it. When Christian Louboutin was designing, he designed and conceived it in his mind, but when he was done, he drew it on a piece of paper. So he's made it concrete. He has intellectual property. And I assume that's the same thing that Itoye Mbase did. When she had the idea for the dress, she put the patterns together using real paper and cut it up. Once she's done that, her intellectual property has come to place. And this is where the idea of the poor man's copyright also comes into place. The poor man's copyright, as you know, is you take your book, your play, your design, your whatever, you write it out on a sheet of paper and you date it, you sign on it, and you email it to yourself or you post it to yourself. Why are you doing that? You are fulfilling the only requirement that needs to exist for you to have intellectual property. The fundamental rule about the intellectual property world. I'm going on and on about this because it's important for you to understand, because remember, intellectual property is an idea. It's not tangible. Like, remember our first example, we use gold. Gold is something that is tangible. So if you have a bar of gold, you have a bar of gold. But if you have the rhythm for a song, we don't know what that rhythm is. That's another explanation of why you write it down, so that we can have a sense of order, we can know who owns what, and so your intellectual property rights will be guaranteed. So as we said, what's intellectual property? Intellectual property refers to the rights you have in law to treat things that are of an intellectual nature in specific ways, such as selling, leasing, renting, and giving out, the same way you could sell, lease, or rent, or give out your house. It means this house is your own. You can do what you want with it. You can lock it up for 6 months if you want, because it is your right to your ownership of that house. It is your right to sell it. It is your right to lease it. Intellectual property means this is my song. I can give it to this person to sing it if I want. I can give it to a movie to put it as part of the score, because I have recorded my rights. I have the rights to do with it as I see fit. I can enter it into an award, so I can win a Grammy or whatever other awards are available. I can enter my design for Red Bottoms into a fashion award series and win best new shoes in town. So that's what intellectual property is. After this basic understanding, we hope you have an idea of what IP is and it improves your life and your work in some way. If you found it useful, you can like and subscribe to the channel and share and like it on Facebook, Instagram with your friends, and we'll talk with you some other time. Cheers.